Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and I am so happy to have Elise Bajohr here. She is a licensed fiduciary with Jewish Family and Children's Services. She has a vast knowledge of what you need to know if you are a solo senior. And so I've asked her here today to present on this. So welcome, Elise.
Thank you so much, Maya. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you everybody for joining. So today I will be talking about choosing the right power of attorney or advocate for you with a focus on solo seniors. And what we'll be doing is first defining solo seniors, then going through the first steps for preparing and choosing your agent or power of attorney, general tips in this process, overall safety and prevention, and how to do this during a pandemic. What happens if you have a medical emergency and have not chosen someone in advance? Question and answer. And then at the end of this presentation and at the end of the PowerPoint are resources. So all of the contact information for the different resources that I am talking about today is included on this PowerPoint, along with the statute for surrogate decision makers. So that will be available. And if you do not, anyone who's registered for this today will receive a copy of the PowerPoint in their email. In the future, if you are watching this as a recording, you can contact TMC for Seniors in order to get that, the presentation. Okay, so what is a solo senior? A solo senior, this is a term that people use to describe themselves. And essentially, today we are focusing on the solo seniors who do not have someone that they would trust in terms of medical decision making if they're not able to do so. But there's a variety of nuances and circumstances where people identify as solo seniors. So some of the circumstances solo seniors can have could be that they're living alone. It could be that their closest partners, friends, or family are estranged, live across the country, around the world. They might have passed away, be a similar age, or have their own medical conditions that prevent them from being able to be there for the individual. They could have personality and beliefs that make them not the person that the solo senior would like to utilize as their trusted decision maker. And there could be issues of reliability for a variety of circumstances. So that's a general overview of the focus we're looking at today. And so first steps in this process. A lot of these might seem very basic, but because humans often do not like thinking, we don't always like thinking of our own mortality, these are really important to lay out. So one of the most important first steps is thinking about your decisions. So it's not always as easy as just, I'm going to designate this person, I want this person as my advocate or my power of attorney, done. It's really, really important to think about what choices you would want for yourself. And part of that process could be talking to your medical provider. So talking about what your conditions are and how they might change over time, what treatments, what quality of life you can expect so that you can prepare for this. There's a lot of helpful tools out there for thinking about the different treatments medically and for end of life. And for example, the 5 wishes is really a great tool and includes a power of attorney, but it goes through a lot of the different options and treatments that we could experience. We also have the end of life or the Arizona Life Care Planning Packet, which is called the Advanced Directive. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. So it's also important or for many, it's important to consider what your preferences are for medical treatments and end of life. And that could be general views or spiritual beliefs in terms of these areas. And then talking to people you trust. So it might not be your actual person that you designate as your power of attorney, for example, but just somebody that you trust to talk about the different options and what's important to you as you figure out what you would want for yourself. So another basic first step is reviewing the documents, and there are a lot of documents. So I'm just giving a very cursory overview. So power of attorney is where we're starting. This is a legal document where you designate somebody to serve as your agent. And what the agent does is they make decisions for you if you are not able to do so yourself. And the term agent we'll be using throughout this presentation. So power of attorneys, there are so many varieties of how they can be written and what rights and powers they include. So they could be for a specific period of time. For example, somebody might have a power of attorney just for the period of recovery after a surgery. They could be regarding medical, mental health, financial areas. They could be revocable. So there's so many different nuances to how the power of attorney is written and what powers it includes for the agent. There's living wills, and this is another legal document that describes your choices for end of life or life-sustaining treatment and any or many medical decisions. So this really goes through what you prefer in terms of medical care. The advanced directives, which is the Arizona Life Care Planning Packet, has a number of components. So first it has the registration agreement, and that agreement, what happens is you sign up and then they send you back a card with a number on it, and you put that card in your wallet, you give the number to your doctor's office, and then ideally, if you went to the hospital, they would be able to pull that number to access your information. It includes a durable healthcare power of attorney, so medical power of attorney, durable mental health care power of attorney, so designating powers for mental health care, the living will, so the medical treatment, the letter to my representative. So this is a letter you could take and then send to the people that you have chosen to be your agents, so notifying them. And then a pre-hospital medical care directive, which is the DNR, or do not resuscitate. And the important thing to keep in mind with this is, while it is a complete packet, you do not have to use every portion of it. So you do not have to complete the DNR or the mental health power of attorney, for example, to complete what portions you do want and submit them. And then wills and trusts are a very important part of the process of estate planning and end-of-life preparation. However, today we are mainly focusing on medical decisions, not financial. And so I'm not going to go into this today, but legal counsel is extremely helpful in determining your estate plan options and figuring that out with you. So another step would be meeting with an elder law attorney, and this could also, it will be a little broader about that as well. So elder law attorneys are extremely helpful in estate planning, like I just reviewed, and for receiving or providing legal advice to you in choosing which documents and what powers to include in those documents. So we are very, very fortunate in Southern Arizona to have a variety of resources available for this type of planning. So for example, Pima Council on Aging has free, although there's of course donations suggested, 30-minute consultations with elder law attorneys that volunteer their time. So that helps make it more accessible. They also have resources for finding local elder law attorneys on their website and helpline. And then we also have the Arizona End of Life Care Partnership. And so This includes a number of different local nonprofits such as Pima Council on Aging, Our Family Services, Interfaith Community Services, and Jewish Family and Children's Services, to name a few. And within this partnership, one of the things that a lot of the participants provide is guidance and support on completing advanced directives, living wills, 5 wishes. So it's really wonderful resources that we have available in our Southern Arizona community. So one of the other most basic steps is, who would you choose? So who are your options? So of course there's family, friends, and significant others. However, for solo seniors, there's often barriers to those options. So people will suggest for solo seniors, you could choose a neighbor, choose someone in your book club, choose somebody from a support group who has similar conditions. And those are options. But if you're looking for somebody that you can trust in a different way, professional services are available. And so, for example, you can hire attorneys or licensed fiduciaries to serve as power of attorney. And a licensed fiduciary like myself, what that means is we are licensed through the Arizona Supreme Court to serve as guardian, conservator, personal representative, or trustee. And we go through a rigorous process of licensure and background checks. And we are trained in decision making. So that is an option that is less expensive than hiring an attorney that is available in this community. And there are resources listed in the back of this PowerPoint. But essentially, you could choose almost anybody to serve in this role. So how do you choose them? The first and most important quality to look for is trust. Do you trust this person? Are you able to build trust with them to know that they will make your decisions and be there for you if you need it? Looking for somebody who is able to research treatments, facilities, and conditions as we all might need at some point. So if they are able to do that work, that they're willing to commit to a possible multi-year relationship. So a lot of times we have this idea that the paramedics come to the door, and let's say the neighbor is the advocate or healthcare proxy, power of attorney. They come to the door and they say, this person does not want intubation, here's their DNR, done. But often it's a series of decisions. Some conditions can last years. Incapacity can, for a variety of reasons, whether it's physical health or mental health, can be longer term. And so it's not usually that very quick decision. So you want somebody who's able to commit to a possible longer term relationship as your decision maker. So somebody who serves in this role should ideally be comfortable in medical settings and providing advocacy. So let's say the doctor that is treating you in the hospital has a course of treatment that they would like, but that is not what you had delineated in your living will. So is the advocate that you have chosen willing and able to go to the doctor and say, no, this person did not want this. We should instead do X. Looking at the potential advocate's own circumstances. So do they have their own health conditions that could prevent them from being able to serve in this role for you? Are they caring for an adult disabled child that takes a lot of their time and energy? These are really important factors to consider when choosing your advocate. Also, are there possible conflicts of interest? So would you want somebody who is providing medical or caregiving services for you to be making these decisions? Or would you want somebody, for example, who is the main beneficiary of your will or trust to be making these decisions? So thinking about, are there any possible conflicts of interest and how do you feel about those? And lastly is their decision-making methods. So is this person going to actually follow what you have told them are your decisions, or would they make decisions based on their own beliefs and preferences when it came down to it? And if you choose to hire a professional, any professional, we make decisions based on substitute judgment. So what that is trying to make a decision in the way that we think you would. So we look at your advance directives, any of the paperwork you have laid out, which is so incredibly helpful. We try to find out other decisions you've made in your life. We talk to people who've known you well to try to make as close to a decision as we are able to think you would make as possible. Then there's also best interest. So best interest would be making the decision that seems like it will benefit you most. Just a general example could be, if you have a condition and are likely to recover quickly, would we choose a invasive surgery to address it, or a different course? What would be in your best interest? So the thing to consider with this is that both of those decision-making methods, they have a lot of history of research and work behind them, but they are not perfect, because what you think is your best interest could be different from what the doctor thinks, from what I think, from what your friend would think. And so whatever you can do to build the relationship, whether it's with a professional or with anyone else you would choose in this role, to get to know them in advance so that they know your decisions and do this preparation, is really key to making sure that your medical treatment is following what you would like. So some tips on getting your medical decisions met. Designating an alternate is extremely important. What that means is when you pick, for example, on your power of attorney, you have your agent. But let's say the person that you chose is up on Mount Lemmon and doesn't get reception, or they're on a cruise, or they have an accident. So you designate an alternate of someone else who can fill in, and that helps ensure that you do have someone there for you in case of need. You can also hire a care manager. So care managers for fees serve to help be on the ground, get to know you, and help with coordinating a lot of typically medical related care. Care managers, for example, could be talking to the hospital, advocating and explaining what your typical functioning is, so that they know that getting you to be able to walk again is a goal, because you were walking previously, for example. So also, let's say you have a great relationship with your cousin who lives in Syracuse, and they are your power of attorney and you trust them. However, they live in Syracuse. So they or you could potentially hire a care manager who could be here doing the groundwork while they would actually make the decisions. But this way you would have a local advocate by your side, pandemic aside. Maintaining up-to-date wallet cards. So that might seem really basic, but once again, because we don't always like thinking about this type of topic, I have seen people have previous spouses on their cards. So it's really essential to maintain your cards, and along with that, to keep your documents up to date and review them with your agent. So this is important for a couple reasons. One, because we change our minds as life happens. There are different treatments that develop. We hear about other people going through similar things, and we just change our minds. This is also important because if you're doing this and having conversations with the people who would be making your decisions for you, it helps build that trust and relationship and helps them get to know you best, whether they're professional or not. So what I recommend for this is set a date, at least annually, that you will review or update this. And that helps with many people's procrastination or, the topic in general. So you could choose an anniversary, a holiday, or any date that you just decide is the day, and you put it on your calendar to make sure this does not go neglected. If you are somebody who chooses to complete your DNR or do not resuscitate forms, please make sure they are visible, accessible, orange, and signed by a physician. So if they are not orange, if you photocopy them on other colored paper, they will not be heeded by the medical community. So please make sure they are the official form if you are choosing to use that. Make your documents accessible. So there is an anecdote of an individual who had a family involved. That person was at their end of life, and the family spent a lot of time to figure out what they thought the decisions the person would have wanted would be, and followed through with that. 6 months go by, and the family's going through the person's household, and they find in the attic a file cabinet buried beneath a lot of boxes that has the decisions, it has the living will of this person, and they had made different decisions than the person actually wanted. So making your documents accessible is so important to getting your wishes heeded and getting the care you want. And also making sure that the people who would be your decision makers know the documents and know where they are. Also considering the health information exchange. So most of us at our doctor's offices have been given the form to choose to register for the health information exchange or not. And this would allow the sharing of your health information with, for example, hospitals or other medical providers. So it's a really good thing to consider and ask your medical office who would access this record, what records, and how would they be used. So I'd like to speak quickly about overall safety and prevention, because while we do all the preparation we can, hopefully, for if something does happen and we're not able to make our decisions, hopefully we never need that. But there are general safety things to keep in mind as solo seniors. The first one I'd like to speak about is safety nets, and this is also known as a caring circle or an aging ally. And essentially, this is a structure. It's not legal, it's not formal, but it's a structure of having at least 2 people that check in with you at least twice a year, and they would learn what's important to you. They would know your lifestyle, who's in your life, in what way. What are you spending your money on? How are you feeling? And the purpose of this is to have someone in your life who can help notice and prevent you from being taken advantage of or exploited. So there are so many ways that having this structure set up informally can help keep us safe. So it once again does not have to be the same level of commitment as choosing your agent, but can go a long way in helping us be safe. And it's really important to trust these people because, for example, it would be really important to know that if the person who's in your caring circle says this new individual in your life who you are very excited about, very appreciative of, is actually seems to be taking advantage of you, and I'm worried. So would you listen to that or not? So it's important to consider who you would use for this. Other tips when we're living alone: Lifelines continue to be a very important option in case we cannot get to the phone but have an emergency. So Lifelines have developed greatly through the last decade, and they're no longer these cumbersome, huge things to wear around your neck necessarily. They could look like a step tracker or a variety of other jewelry or accessories. So it's really good to look into those if you haven't. An exciting new option for those of you who are comfortable with technology and have access to it, there are apps or applications that exist for every cost range that help provide daily check-ins. And so I'll give an example. One of these, I believe it's Snug Safety, is about $3 a month. And what they do is they'll call you, or these types of apps will call at a certain time every day. If you do not answer, they will call again at a set interval. And if you do not answer at a certain amount of attempts, then they would alert your safety net or emergency services, so whoever you have set up. So this is another way to help make sure that we are not languishing and that we're getting the care we need when we are not able to call for it ourselves. So overall safety, the general safety, know the signs of fraud. Fraud is prevalent right now throughout this country and world, and a lot of people focus on older adults. So there are wonderful resources out there through AARP and Pima Council on Aging. So for you to know the signs of fraud and to encourage your advocate to also get educated on the signs of fraud, or your caring community, is very helpful for general safety. Discuss your documents with an attorney, which we've gone through, talking to your medical provider about your conditions and treatment. And then lastly, live in a community situation. So this can be a variety of options, and it's essentially saying live somewhere that people know that you are there and have an idea that you're there. So options for those types of living situations exist for every income bracket, essentially. And if you want to explore that, there are resources listed in the back. So the big question, how do I get everything set up during a pandemic? So one thing is a lot of these documents require or have the option of having a notary, someone to notarize your signature. And if you are able to go online and do a Google search, there are so many options for Pima County for mobile notaries. And there's reviews, whether it's through Google or Yelp. And if you are not comfortable with the search yourself online, you could call 211 or ask another local nonprofit to help you pull out some of those numbers. Many attorneys are providing virtual, video or phone, or socially distanced and following the hygiene recommendation for their services. The same is true for the nonprofits in town that are providing services to help prepare your documents. So this is a really important time to advocate for yourself by asking for the protocols and options when you're contacting people. And doing that, asking the question so you can make the decision on which protocol and which agency feels safest and most comfortable to you is really, really important for getting this done during the pandemic. So what happens if you have not set up your power of attorney and you have a medical emergency where you become unable to make your decisions yourself? So you're in the hospital, and the social worker will look for a surrogate decision maker. So someone to stand in and make your decisions. And that statute is the last two slides on this for any of you who'd like to read the actual legalese. So what they do is they look for somebody in the following order. First, they will look for a spouse, then an adult child, then a parent, then a domestic partner, then a sibling, and lastly, a close friend. So that is who they will search for in that order and who would have priority over the other in terms of making the decisions. The hospitals do not want lawsuits. Of course, I mean, who does really? But So ideally, if more than one person is found, they would want them to agree. They would hope for that. But let's say you, as a solo senior, for example, let's say you do not have a spouse and you have an adult child, but you are estranged from them and do not want them making your decisions. You want your domestic partner to. The best way to, or one of the best ways to make sure that the people that you want to make your decisions would be the ones doing it, would be to have your documents, have your agent designated, and have those accessible. So that's one of the safest ways to make sure that your treatment will be handled the way you would want. If the hospital cannot find somebody out of that list or any documentation, they could use the doctor who's treating you going to the hospital ethics committee to decide on the course of action, or two doctors could agree on the course of treatment. So once again, there is a lot of liability in this, and it's not necessarily preferred by the hospitals, and I can't speak for the hospitals, obviously, but it's also not necessarily the best option for us as individuals, because these are people who do not know you making those decisions. So that can be problematic. If the hospital realizes that you are not competent, if they believe you are not competent and you need a longer term person to make these difficult decisions, they think you need a guardian, what they would do is they would call out and refer you to licensed fiduciaries, whether it's the public fiduciary or private fiduciaries. If the fiduciary accepts the case, they would work with an attorney to file. A court-appointed investigator would look into this, and there would be a hearing about your competency and whether or not to appoint a guardian. This is an extremely serious process because it takes away a lot of your basic rights and decision-making abilities. So while guardians seek the best quality of life, the least restrictive environments, and encourage opportunities for your growth, it still is taking away your rights. So trying to get together your power of attorneys, your documents ahead of time, so that there is not the need, hopefully, to go this extra step, can be really, really helpful in maintaining your rights as an individual. Not in every case, but it's very helpful in general. So any questions? Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Elise. So I do have a couple of questions that came up, and it was really about when you're assigning an advocate, if you end up assigning somebody who perhaps is unable to complete that duty at any time, can you stipulate, let's say you only have the one person, could you stipulate that you have a fiduciary take over in your advance directive paperwork, or how would you do that process?
That's a great question. So in general, what I would recommend is to build the relationship with the fiduciary of your choice ahead of time, because just like any profession or any individual, fiduciaries have different personalities and different ways that they work. And so I would recommend trying to have conversations or meet with some ahead of time. And then you would designate that specific fiduciary or fiduciary agency on your form. Otherwise, in terms of if they are looking for somebody to fill in, you did not do that, the hospital or they would most likely look for a fiduciary. So,
okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and then could you, if you have, can you designate, I know you can designate an alternate. If somebody was incapacitated, or one of your agents ends up either maybe they die or they're incapacitated, it's better, I'm assuming it is better to update your advance directive instead of just continuing to list a whole bunch, right? Because I know that we always talk about maybe looking at it at least once a year to sort of update and make sure that we're following the wishes, because your wishes may change. So, I'm assuming that would be your recommendation as well, but I want to make sure.
So I think that when it comes down to it, in terms of what is better, I think that would have to come from an attorney, because I think that's more under the realm of legal advice. However, I think in general, you would probably be safe either way. So I think it's cleaner probably to have, to omit people who are deceased or no longer willing or able. It would avoid the phone call to them to figure that out in case of emergency. But in terms of what is legally best, I would say to talk to an attorney.
Okay. Now, if you were to go with a fiduciary and that's you've decided that that's really going to be the best for you, can you discuss what does that look like? What kind of cost is it on average, maybe on an annual basis, to have a fiduciary?
That's another great question. So fiduciaries in Tucson, I think the range is between about $90 an hour up. So I think some of the most expensive are around $150 an hour on average. And a lot of attorneys' offices have fiduciaries who serve with them, and they are not able, if it's a fiduciary task, they're not able to bill the attorney fee. They have to bill the fiduciary fee. So the process, usually fiduciaries don't have an annual cost. They will charge typically based on the minutes that they are providing service for. They might have a charge of a specific amount for enrollment or a specific amount for updating or creating the documents with you. Although a legal document preparer or an attorney typically has to create the documents with you. So the process is you would usually meet with a fiduciary. You would talk to them about what you're looking for. They would describe their process, their fee schedule, how often they typically want to check in with you, and how they handle their business. Then you would get your documents, you would appoint them, and you would give them those documents appointing them. And then you would check in with them periodically. We typically bill in 6-minute increments in this field. So unless it's a specific, we're charging X amount to create your whole file, or to enroll you, it's typically you wouldn't pay for the whole hour. You would pay for the exact amount that you're receiving in 6-minute increments.
Okay, that's really helpful. So if somebody was using a fiduciary, they may just be checking in with them in the beginning, perhaps just on an annual basis, to make sure everything is still the way they want it. And then they would really be becoming much more, you'd be looking at obviously many more minutes if something was to happen and you were perhaps in the hospital.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. So I did want to put up, I know Elise had mentioned that we have a copy of her presentation. If you are interested in receiving that, anyone who is watching today who had registered in advance, I will be sending out a copy of that. But if for some reason you are looking at this later, which many of you might, feel free to reach out to the TMC for Seniors office, and we'd be happy to email you a copy of that as well. I also did want to mention that we do have a volunteer that comes in and will work with you on completing your documents. So if that is something that you're interested in, or just have other questions regarding your advance directives, he is currently working over the phone with folks who are in need of those services. So feel free to again call our office, which is 324-1960. And so Oh, so the question regarding the fiduciary cost, I'm not sure if they missed it, but you said in Tucson it runs around $90 to $150 an hour. Is that correct, Elise?
That's a good average. I think there are a few lower cost fiduciaries that are less than 100. In general, I think 100 is a good average, 125, but you're paying for the experience level. And some fiduciaries will do sliding scale. There's also the public fiduciary for those who are unable to pay or have no one else. The public fiduciary is through the county, and they provide fiduciary services as well.
Okay. And if somebody does not have a mental health care power of attorney, but they have their health care power of attorney, that could be an issue as well. Is that correct? If for some reason they needed some sort of additional services related to their mental health, because we do have the two
Mm-hmm.
in Arizona, which I know sometimes people don't realize, correct? So they should complete both, right?
Right. So the mental health care power of attorney is relatively new in this state. And whether or not they complete both is really a personal choice. I think that having that conversation with your advocate about exactly what powers you would want to designate, so or having that conversation with your attorney or legal document preparer to figure out some people might not want to be receive a higher level of care for mental health services. However, for example, somebody might say that if it's a at the point where they would do court ordered treatment, then they would want you to agree to avoid getting the court involved. There's so many nuances to those documents, and it's like all of this a personal decision. So I think it really bears or merits having an in-depth conversation with somebody with experience.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sort of enlightening on how, it's really important to have those conversations.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. That's all the questions that I have today, Elise. We appreciate you all being here, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me, and what wonderful questions. And thank you, TMC for Seniors.